Hello, dear colleague. Thank you for joining me for your emergency response crisis management training. Before we get started, you have three resources that you'll want to have open that were sent to you with your email regarding this training. You'll want to open this master presentation, which is the nuts and bolts main presentation. You'll want to open the fire evacuation map PDF. And then you also will want to open the ERCM training post-test. This video will be included in the post-test form, so you may actually watch this video inside that form. You will need to complete your ERCM training post-test in order to have credit for completing your training for this year. So make sure you get that done. If you do not have that done by the date in your post-test form, someone will reach out to you to see how we can support you to get that done as soon as possible. The number one rule when it comes to emergency response crisis management is to stay calm and work with the other adults at South High School, any district representatives who may be involved in an actual response crisis management process in order to make sure that we all can come through whatever crisis we face safely. So just stay calm no matter what, even if you have to fake it till you make it. Just try to stay calm for the sake of the kiddos, and it'll help us navigate whatever issues we're facing. There are three main ERCM crisis modes that you need to be prepared for. The first of which is an evacuation of the building, and that's usually due to a fire, could be an issue around hazardous material, or some type of threat that requires us to leave the building. The second category are our lockdown or lockout crisis management modes, and that's usually due to some type of internal or external personal threat, i.e. someone who's actually threatening the campus. So the third one is shelter in place, and that's usually due to severe weather. We're going to go through each of these in detail so that you understand what is expected of you when we are managing one of these crises. First up is evacuation. If you hear the alarm indicating that we need to evacuate the building, or you hear a directed evacuation over the loudspeaker, please treat it like it is real. Every time you hear it, you never know when it is a drill or if it's real. So please, every time you hear that alarm to evacuate, please evacuate immediately. Everyone has been, or every room has an evacuation location assigned, either in the front of the building, to the south of the building, just south of the building, or to the back east side of the building. All right, and we'll go over those here in a little bit in a little more detail. If you're interested and you want to pause the video, you can open up the fire evacuation PDF to take a look at that. What we'll ask you to do as you leave is just quickly close your door, lights out if you can, and just move quickly and quietly out of the building using your evacuation map as the directive as to which direction you should go, which stairwell you should use, etc. If by chance you do not have an evacuation map in your room, please send an email to the contact in your post-training form, and we will make sure that you get a replacement evacuation map. Also note that even though an evacuation map will have your preferred route out of the building. Sometimes those particular stairwells in a real evacuation may be blocked for whatever reason. So always have in mind an alternate route out of the building. Let's take a quick look at the fire evacuation map PDF. So as you can see, this is a map of the front parking lot, and you can see it's been sectioned off into rows that have specific locations for each room on each of our three main levels, right? And so in your post test, you will be asked to identify the room or rooms with which you work out of each day, and make sure that you know very specifically which row or rows and locations that you will need to evacuate to in case of a building evacuation. So make sure you're aware of that. Take some time to find that space today. We also have evacuation areas for the back of the building where many of our classes who are located at the back of the building can relocate to. It's the soccer field, tennis courts, all right? And then we have an area where individuals who may be in the main gym or gym lobby, the locker rooms, or that hallway containing rooms 171 and 173 can evacuate to just west of gym lobby in the grass area. All right, so just make sure you're aware of that. One important thing to consider for our evacuations is some individuals may not be able to exit the building, right? For whatever reason, they're on crutches, they can't get up and down the stairwells quickly. In those cases, we're going to ask that those individuals be directed to the staging areas where we will have individuals who will be able to help them exit the building. And so our staging areas are in the elevator areas, which is where that stairwell is, closer to the north side of the building on floors 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you have a student who's on crutches or can't get down the stairs or in a wheelchair, they should be directed to go to the elevator shaft or elevator area, which will be our staging area on each of those floors. All right. So let's return to our main presentation. There may be situations where we have to evacuate South High School altogether and not just relocate in the parking lot or any of those evacuation areas. In that case, in the more severe circumstance, we have two evacuation sites. We can relocate at All City Stadium at the complex just south of the building, or we can relocate at the Washington Park Recreation Center. So both of those are options for you and for our students, right? In the case that we do have to evacuate the campus altogether, we will relocate at one or both of those sites. And then District and South High School ERCM SORT resources will be there to help provide directions on next steps. So just know those are our super emergency evacuating sites. Next one up is shelter in place. Again, we usually use shelter in place when we're faced with a severe weather condition. As the GIF or the picture here shows, what we typically want to have everyone do is to evacuate all of the external classrooms. And generally, we want everyone to just come out of their classrooms and find a safe hallway or or stairwell or area where there are no exposures to outside, immediate exposure to outside, meaning windows, um, skylights, etc. And so typically what happens is on each of the main floors, everyone will come out of their classrooms, bring their students out of the classrooms, and we'll have students sit in the hallway quietly. Um, Obviously, in this particular era, we would have concerns about social distancing. And in case of emergency, the emergency will trump any considerations around social distancing if it were a real emergency. But of course, in this case, if we're just practicing during a drill, we can have students socially distance in the hallway. The key is, again, to just keep everyone away from windows. Okay, so make sure that even if you're on the second floor, for example, third floor, you want to stay away from areas in those hallways where there are windows. Right. When you come out of your classroom, make sure your classroom door is closed. We'll check to make sure all students are out of the bathrooms and out of all the stairwells that are exposed by windows. All right. Lockdown and lockout scenarios. A lockdown is used when there's an active threat inside the building. A lockout is used when there's an active threat outside of the building, right? An announcement will be made by someone over a loudspeaker indicating that we are in either a lockdown or lockout mode. In case of a lockdown, we want you to turn your classroom lights off, cease all activities, lock your classroom doors from the inside. Everyone should have a safe key that will allow you to do that. Actually, now I'll take that back. I apologize. We used to have safe keys, and there may be a few instances where we still do, but for most of our classrooms, we now have the twist locks that allow us to lock our doors from the inside, right? The biggest thing is to make sure we lock those doors, get yourself and get your students down and out of sight of your classroom door windows. And everyone needs to be quiet, right? We highly recommend that you have some type of system that will allow you to quickly cover your classroom doors, right? Like we have Velcro available in the main office, and I know we've had staff in the past that just placed Velcro at the top of their door windows and had some type of mechanism that would allow them to very quickly just stick something over your classroom door window. You cannot have your classroom door window covered at all times, only during a lockdown, right? For lockouts, everything that goes on within the building can just continue to operate normally. In that case, we will have administrative and culture team and other non-teaching staff members manning all of the external doors to make sure that no one is entering or exiting the building for the duration of the lockout. True or false? Only the site administrator can call a lockdown. What do you think? False. Anyone can call a lockdown if there is a known or perceived threat. Generally, these are your responsibilities. Please follow all the directives of the site administrator or principal or his or her designee. Please carry out all of the directives in a swift, organized, and calm manner that conveys confidence to students. All right, remember, going back to that number one rule, stay calm at all times. One important thing that we want to cover that's a little bit different from what we've done in the past is when we have an evacuation and you go to your evacuation site, obviously we need you to take paper copies of your student rosters with you out there so that you can take roll. And this year we're going to ask you to do a little bit something different when it comes to how you take roll, right? On your paper rosters, we're going to ask you to mark an A for a student who was absent from your class prior to evacuating, right? meaning a student who just never showed up to your class. We're going to ask you to mark a P for students present at the evacuation site. So this is, students who are on your roster for that particular period who you can account for visually at your evacuation site. And we're going to ask you to mark an M for students who were present in your class prior to evacuating, but are not present at the evacuation site. So they were in class with you before the alarm rang, but you do not have eyes on them at your evacuation site. We will make sure that we drill this year. Obviously, we're going to want to account for those M students fairly quickly, which is why we're going to this new way of designating role at our evacuation sites. So to that end, in order to prepare for our emergencies, make sure you keep an updated paper copy of your class rosters readily accessible. Right? You will not be able to take your computer. You cannot guarantee that will be able to happen. And even if you were, due to a real emergency, computer access may not be a viable option. So please make copies of your rosters today, put them in a folder, have that folder available to you near your exit. Prepare students for your emergency response process by practicing the drills with fidelity when we practice them throughout the year. We will practice fire drills once a month moving forward. And as was stated earlier, we will have unannounced drills that the district also initiates. And most importantly, know your emergency procedures. This training is part of that process. You have the master deck and you have the fire evacuation or building evacuation maps. Study them. Make sure you know where you're going in case we do have an emergency. And ultimately, you can always reach out to anyone on the administrative team to get answers to questions with regards to our ERCM response modes. All right. Lastly, during an emergency, again, follow directions. Make sure you have your students' attention. You're escorting them out of the building, getting them to follow the directions during the lockdown, being quiet, getting out of the way of those door windows, etc. Make sure you're able to account for students. Make sure you're aware of any disabled students and you're helping them to the best of your ability, and ultimately staying calm, right? Keeping order, right? Giving students the confidence that everything's going to be okay, right? Thank you for your time.